And I guess we want to take the opportunity to congratulate you on your appointment as Dean
Thank you.
of the Paul Nitze School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins. We're, of course, very sad you'll be leaving Fletcher.
So am I.
But we'd like just, if you would, to maybe just reflect a little bit on your time at Fletcher. What has been, I guess, the best part of your experience here? You were here first as a student and now as a professor. And what will you miss most about the Fletcher School?
Well, you're right. I mean, my first experience with Fletcher and with the international relations education was as a student. And the more I've progressed over the years, the more I have found that education to have been important and rewarding in ways in which I didn't understand at the time being. I took a lot of economics at Fletcher, and then when I focused on Islamic fundamentalism and the relationship between these was not even apparent to me at that point in time, other than general knowledge. But over the years, I've actually have found the great depth of understanding I have about economics, policy making. Many of these issues really goes back to my time at Fletcher. Since I came back to Fletcher 5 years ago, I've had a very fruitful and rewarding time here, largely working with students in class, in office hours, out of class. I've learned a lot from them. I wrote 2 books while I was at Fletcher. One I wrote while I was at Fletcher. The other one is mostly done, but will come out after I'm gone. And I benefited a lot from what I learned from students in class, from what they asked, from what they were doing, from the stories they told me about their experiences, what interests them. And I've found the environment in Fletcher to be intellectually rich, but also a sense of community that is very, very reflected in the attitude of the students and the faculty towards the school. And I took on this new responsibility at SAIS, largely now believing in the great importance of the kind of international education that Fletcher and schools like SAIS provide, and it is really there that these 2 worlds of academia, of theory, history, and policy making come together. And for the future of our world, for the future of America, in whatever sector you look at, it is very important to get that right. And I think in large measure Fletcher has that right in its curriculum, in its student body, and therefore I'm leaving Fletcher obviously with very fond memories, with very rich experience, and also very grateful for everything that I've learned during my time here.
And you mentioned the interaction that you've had with students and what you've been able to learn from them. Is there a particular example maybe of the most interesting thing you've ever learned from a student, whether it's just through a brief conversation or through interacting with them on a research project or anything that you particularly remember?
Well, there are several. I mean, literally, I've asked every student what are they doing, what brought them to Fletcher, and they've come up with very interesting ideas. I mean, I remember a student who told me the year before he came to Fletcher that they worked in Libya, and this is before the tumult in Libya, and told me stories about arms caches there and how the environment that was there. And I remember I even mentioned that it was very eye-opening for me, everything she was saying about Libya and her experience of working there. And I remember I repeated her story to people in Washington, and it was also interesting to them secondhand, as sort of a ground level knowledge of the extent to which Libyan society was militarized, the absence of institutions, the way things looked up. And there are many stories like that. I've learned from students in their theses that they wrote about Islamic institutions in Singapore or in Southeast Asia, which is beyond an area that I've focused, but are on topics that I am keenly aware of and interested in, and therefore, this is an ongoing process. It's not that a student tells you one time something that you don't know. But what I found at Fletcher is that students have such diverse experiences and such diverse interests that the student body in itself is an educational opportunity, not for themselves that they can learn from one another, but also for the faculty.